in Turkey, President Erdogan is continuing to consolidate his power after the crisis they had there not long ago. A parliamentary commission is proposing significant amendments to their constitution that would have pretty significant changes long term, like this. Under the changes, the prime minister's post will be abolished. Just off with the prime minister. So look, obviously, from parliamentary system to parliamentary system, the powers that the prime minister has, the role that they serve can change widely from one to another. But it is, in effect, the leader of the legislature. And in most countries that have parliamentary systems, it's an important position. And it can be for places that have joint prime minister-president systems, which is not all, but Turkey is an example of that, can be a sort of balancing factor. That balance will be gone if these changes go into effect. The constitutional changes would give the president executive power over Turkish law, allowing him to form a government independently of parliament and appoint his own aides, ministers, and deputies. So look, best case scenario, if you want to make this not seem as bad as it probably will be, it's something akin to making the president in Turkey more like the role of the president in the U.S., and he can have his own cabinet. And normally in parliament, in various parliaments, that sort of system is drawn from parliament, and he has his cabinet. This will be more like the U.S. system, I guess. Additionally, the draft bill also permits the president to maintain ties with a political party, which is banned under the current constitution, to maintain the principle of impartiality, while limiting leaders to 2 terms in office. So previously, Erdogan had to cut his formal ties with his political party to fit in under what the constitution required. There's some other smaller changes as well. But what's your initial reaction to this?
I actually have a split reaction to this. So I got no love for Erdogan. He's right-wing. I'm not right-wing. He is much more fundamentalist in terms of his religious views. I'm deeply secular and not at all religious. So if I lived in Turkey, I suppose I would have voted for someone else. I don't know who that would be because they're so feckless over there in opposing him. But it certainly wouldn't have been Erdogan. Yeah. Okay, now, so why am I mixed on this? I don't like parliamentary systems, and that's going to be really, controversial for a lot of people who live throughout the world who live in parliamentary systems. Parliamentary system is what allowed a guy who is, in my opinion, far too fundamentalist and religious and right-wing to gain power in the first place in Turkey. Erdogan himself, he became prime minister back in 2002, was prime minister for 11 years. Why? In a parliamentary system, everything splinters. And when you have everything that splinters, you'll have like 13 different secular parties, and you'll have one religious party, and somebody will come out and say, Jesus said to vote for this guy. Everybody go, okay, yes, we bow our heads, well, I vote with Jesus. Or in the case of Turkey, Allah said to vote with this guy. I bow my head, I vote with Allah. Okay, how do you know Allah said to vote with that guy?
Because he said to vote for that guy.
Right, but they vote like robots. So it allows that to be the largest bloc. Religious groups, a lot of times, not every time, religious groups in Israel are not the largest bloc, but I think they have far too much power, right? And that's what happens under parliamentary systems. So if they're going to go to a U.S.-style president versus a prime minister, that's not, in my opinion.
And that's a rough analogy that I'm making, but it seems from my view what they're doing.
And thank God they will not have an electoral college. Okay, so that's a terrible part of our system. The fact that he says that the president can say what party they're from, of course, everybody knows what party Erdogan's from. Who are they kidding when they say, oh, no, I am not part of a party anymore, right? Yeah. So that's an obvious lie. And another good part of this is, and we'll have to see if he actually abides by this, is to 2-term limit. Although they're increasing the number of years the president serves from 4 years to 5 years. So this is Erdogan saying, give me 10 more years and then we'll see what happens, right? Well, what happens then is very, very important. Because if he just steps down and somebody else runs for president, okay, we saved democracy in Turkey, which is very important. But strong men like power. That's why he went from prime minister to president, and that's why he's doing this constitutional flip-flop so he can hang on to power. You're really sure he's going to go in 10 years? I'm not at all sure that he's going to go.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern. Even if you have issues with a parliamentary system, intent matters in this case, and his intention is obviously a power grab. right? And so he wants more power concentrated in what he does. And that scares me, especially considering some of the actions that he's taken against those who have criticized him, the action that he's taken against anyone that he suspected to be part of the coup earlier this year. And so, look, you're seeing this type of behavior among right-wingers throughout the world. I mean, on a much more local level here in the United States, you saw it happen with lawmakers in North Carolina. They have a new governor, and the lawmakers are like, we don't want this governor, who's a Democrat, to have any power, so we're literally going to take his power away, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned about Erdogan going through with this. I don't know what kind of actions he would take if he gets these constitutional amendments through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just go through a couple of the other changes that they're making. Some are small, like the number of parliamentarians is going to increase from 550 to 600. Always a controversial move to make. As Cenk said, elections will be held every 5 years rather than 4. Now, these changes are going to be put to a referendum, which the government says they're going to hold in spring. I saw one poll from a UK-based pollster that showed that 55%, I believe it was at that point, support the changes already. And so that's some sign. Now, this is before the campaigning for and against it. By the way, Anna referenced some of the retaliatory actions that Erdogan and his supporters took against those who they feel were on the wrong side of that coup attempt. And Mr. Erdogan has rebuffed criticism of widespread purges in the military, civil service, government, education, and media, also the courts, by the way, while attacking reports on the alleged torture and abuse of detainees. Probably didn't happen. You don't have to worry about that. And we're sort of burying the lead here, but according to the draft, the president will also have the authority to declare emergency rule, which currently requires parliamentary approval.
Oh boy, that's terrible. Yeah. So that is among the worst parts of that legislation, no question. So if you're in America or in the rest of the world and you're wondering, okay, what's the importance of all this? Well, Turkey is pretty much in the center of the world. It's in the Middle East, it's in Europe, it's in the Mediterranean. It is a secular democracy that is 99% Muslim. And so we used to hold it up as the model of how a Muslim nation can be democratic and secular and part of the West. They're the second largest army in NATO. They're the 17th largest economy in the world. So it is critical that Turkey holds, that it holds in the Western world, it holds in the secular world. So any move where it goes away from that is not just dangerous to Turkey itself, but to the region and to the world. So that's why this story is very, very important. Now, is he going to be able to get this through? Polling has its approval at 55% if it goes to the referendum. But the disapproval is like in the 20s. So that looks like, and 16% are unsure. So it looks like it's very likely to pass. Now, if you're wondering why Erdogan's so popular, because there's two things that you might not know if you're just watching Western media. One is, so the coup that was against him was done by this faction, this Fethullah Gulen faction, random religious leader that lives in Pennsylvania and is protected by the American government. And so the only guy worse than Erdogan, in my opinion, in Turkish politics is that guy, Fethullah Gulen, okay, who is even more religious, more fundamentalist, and grabbed even more power in Turkey. And he infiltrated, it's like a Scientology-like cult, and they did it in a shocking way. They take close to 25% of people's incomes, so they accumulate wealth, whoever's in the cult, accumulate wealth very quickly, and they put people inside the police departments, huge numbers, inside the police departments, inside the military, inside the justice system. So if this cult wanted anybody gone or to seize power, they could. Now, one of the few upsides of Erdogan is he's uprooting that cult because they clashed. They used to be allies. Now they hate each other.
Why do they hate each other so much? Where did that come from?
So that's a very long story, but the short of it is, as with all right-wingers who have giant egos, at some point, I want the power. No, I want the power, right?
Yeah.
And then there's some, international intrigue there involving Israel, America, and whether Gulen works for the CIA. He does. And it gets even more complicated. You got a fundamentalist guy who's in cahoots with the American government. But he's got fundamentalist Muslim schools all across the world, and that which allows some allies in America to plant people in those schools, to monitor things. You see how this works? Yeah. Okay. So he's getting rid of Gulen. Good. Trust me, that's great for the world. Okay. He's taking all the power for himself. Bad. So a lot of the guys he arrested, he should have arrested after the coup. But then, did he throw in some left-wing guys and then have people who have
Exactly.
nothing to do with
Members of the media
Gulen?
and judges
You
and-
know, in the meanwhile,
Yes.
well, if I'm getting rid of enemies,
Yeah,
why
I mean,
not?
Honestly,
right?
that was my biggest concern, and it was based on flimsy evidence and ridiculous reasons, and so again, it's a power grab, so that concerns me.
Yeah, and finally, the other part that doesn't get covered in the news enough is there's been, unfortunately, terrible terrorism in Turkey. Over the last couple of years, dozens of attacks, not just from ISIS, but also from the PKK and offshoots of the PKK, which is a Kurdish terrorist group that operates inside Turkey. So, that unnerves people, right? As the Israeli citizens, for example, when they get bombarded by Hamas, go, okay, where's the right-wingers? Let's go attack them and get vengeance, right? Turks feel similarly. Okay, we're getting bombarded. Oh my God, 52 people just died in the middle of Istanbul or in the middle of Kayseri, whatever. Where's my right-winger who's going to get vengeance for me?
They just want a
Erdogan.
strong man, yeah.
Yeah, they want a strong man. So that's why Erdogan's popular. And then when he was able to vanquish that coup, he showed even more strength. So, and he talks about foreign forces that are, operating inside of Turkey. Some of that is a little true. So that gives him more strength. So that is why this will probably pass. And in the short term, if it uses it to get rid of the cult of Gulen, not such a bad thing. In the long term, deeply, potentially problematic.
Yeah.
And power grabs are usually not a good thing. You don't want to sign up for membership?
Wrong.
You're going to love membership. TYTnetwork.com/join.